Thanks to our sponsors today, A.W. Jenkinson Forest Products. Market leaders in the forestry industry, offering everything from site clearances to collection of wood chip nationwide. Wherever your ARB needs, A.W. Jenkinson has a fleet of over 900 vehicles, including mobile chippers, grinders and walking floor trailers. Check out all of their services at awjenkinson.co.uk. Thanks to our sponsor today, Arboricultural, the UK's leading business finance broker for the ARB industry. If you're looking to finance a new or used machine, get an instant finance estimate from Arboricultural. Find hundreds of trusted machines at arboricultural.co.uk or source a machine yourself from any dealer or private seller. Arboricultural will spread the cost of ownership with competitive, affordable monthly payments at a market-leading low fixed rate. Play online 24/7 at arboricultural.co.uk. Arboricultural is 100% impartial and 100% ARB. Welcome to episode 29 of the All Things Are podcast. We have a very special episode today. Something that has been in the works for several months. We have been invited to come down to the famous Malt House in Gloucestershire, which can only mean one thing. I am joined by the big dog in the industry, Mr. John Parker from the Arboricultural Association. John, thank you very much for inviting us down.
Thank you. I'm not sure about big dog, but yeah, no, thank you. Nice to see you.
Like, nothing goes through arboriculture without John's approval.
I wouldn't say that.
But yeah, it's an absolutely lovely house. It's house, office.
Yeah, it's great. It's a lovely location. It's a fantastic building. Definitely a bit old and a bit weird, but it's brilliant. And we
It's
like it.
very arboriculture.
Yeah.
It's like you pull into the back and go, right, the office could be there, the yard could be out back, the chip and the log pile could be over there.
Absolutely. We don't want anything too streamlined and tidy. Yeah. It's nice to have a bit of character.
So because you've not always been based here, you moved here not that long ago, wasn't it? And then where were you beforehand?
Well, the ARB Association's been here for about 10 years or something like that. Before that I was up at Cheltenham, but that's long before I was involved with it. Yeah, so been here for quite a while.
Thank you, years ago. So my first question I like to ask everyone, anyone who's looking for a different podcast to listen to, the High Performance Podcast by Jake Humphries and Damien was absolutely fantastic podcast to listen to. So my take on their opening question is, what does arboriculture mean to you?
What does it mean to me? It means tree care in a sort of literal sense. It is a very important profession to me. It's where I've sort of found my niche, I guess, in my career. And it's something that not enough people understand or know what it is. That's one of the big challenges that I think we face. But for me, it's my profession. It's my hobby and my passion. And, I think it's very unique, probably not unique, but very unusual. The people who work in arboriculture, you don't just fall into it. You do it because you've got an interest in it, because you've got a passion. And that's one of the things that makes it such a special profession.
What age were you when you first heard about this industry?
Quite late on, really. I was probably about 25, 26 before I even knew it was a thing. At no point before had anyone told me that there might be a career to be made from trees in any of the many different ways that we know you can make a career in trees. I'd been knocking around for a long time doing different things before I knew it was something that I could do.
Because it was 17, I originally started off in horticulture, and it was the case we were on Lord Derby's estate just outside Knowsley, and I seen these lads in the train and thought, well, what is that? And when it's arboriculture, couldn't even pronounce it at the time. They explained it to me, and I went, I think I'd rather be playing with chainsaws than playing with spades. So I got started. I went to college, got all my qualifications, and then moved off into the East Midlands. Everyone's heard that story a number of times. One question I not actually asked anyone: when was the first time you climbed a tree?
In a sort of a ropes and doing it properly
way? No, childish way, like risking life and limb.
Good. I climbed plenty of trees when I was little, definitely. I got in trouble for climbing trees at school, I know that. My grandparents had an old apple tree in their garden I remember used to climb as well. So, young. I don't know what age, but young.
Because I think everyone comes from that boyish outdoor background of just, if my hands aren't muddy, you've not played out long enough.
Yeah, well, boys and girls, I think both like to get their hands muddy, but yeah, definitely it's a great thing to be able to do when you're a child, and I think there's been a lot too much emphasis over the years of risk and worrying about children climbing trees. Obviously we've got to make sure people don't hurt themselves, but equally climbing trees is one of the ways that people learn about risk management themselves when they're young.
Well, it's like technology has also taken the front seat, where going outside doing stuff in the outdoors. You go to parks and you see kids to Instagram, gotta get selfies. It's just go enjoy nature, just listen to it. Just people forget you go to a park and go, oh, it's really quiet in a park. Yeah, because it's nature. You're not there. You're not got your phone pinging off every 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's really important that people still do that.
What is your favourite tree?
Species or individual?
Both.
Okay, well, it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's like picking your favourite child.
Yeah.
Everyone can do that, really. There's nobody admits to it. But all sorts of different species I think are great. I mean, I always have a soft spot for London planes. I love the London plane tree. Spend a lot of time working in London. I think they sort of give an entire city a real character.
Yeah.
So I think London planes are awesome for all sorts of reasons. It is pretty hard to beat an old, ancient oak. That's a difficult thing to beat. There's something absolutely magical about them. If I had to absolutely pick one, I might go for the yew. I think the yew is a pretty special tree. Yeah. I think it's apart from just being incredible and beautiful, there's such cultural and spiritual significance for the yew. It's a really really special one. So, but I could pick it. You could ask me again tomorrow, and I'll give you a different answer. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. For some reason, ash trees have always appealed to me. Where it's like at the moment with the current dieback, it's like. We've got another Dutch elm on our hands at the moment. It's heartbreaking to see because you go out and we see contractors at the moment and we're talking acres and acres of trees that are just getting taken clean out. Yeah,
it's a worrying one. The message that the association's been trying to get across to landowners and tree managers is trying to make a proportionate response, and it's making sure that we're not preemptively removing trees that aren't yet diseased, because they're the trees that are going to give us our future genetic diversity for the ash to recover. So we want to avoid a kind of knee-jerk reaction where people are just taking down every ash tree because there may be a risk that in the future they'll get ash dieback. It's
that blanket felling to where you can go to sites and you go, hang on, the dieback's on the far side. Right, you just do a basic tree survey and you'll notice between that section and this section, it's rare, but if it happens, it happens. But you've got quite a lot of different species in between to reduce that effect on coming over. But again, landowners, they have to take that risk and go, and it's safer for me to fell these 800 to 1,000 trees than to have one tree come down on one person and have £1 million lawsuit against them.
Yeah, it's a tough one to get people to balance that out. But again, it's all part of the role of the arboriculturalist, is to try and educate people and explain to them that it's not just about risk, it's about benefits as well.
Yeah, because I noticed one thing that I love to see this year after I can't remember what storm we've just had, but we had that many at the start of the year. You were promoting the biodiversity. So if the trees come down and if you can, leave it instead of making the landscape look nice and clean. Yeah. We do a lot of commercial, a lot of domestic stuff. And there's been times where we could have left habitat poles, we could have left the timber on the ground to make wildlife habitats. And the clients are like, no, we want it to look clean. It's like, you're not helping nature. First you've asked us to take the tree down, and now you're asking us to take it all away.
Yeah, again, it's sort of educating the general public, I suppose, and people do often like things to be nice and clean and tidy and perfect, but we know that's not the best thing for biodiversity, and there's so much value in not just deadwood on the ground, but standing deadwood as well, that we need to try and make sure that's retained.
Yeah, because you could go to, we've got a local park near us, Heaton Parks, it's massive, absolutely massive, and you walk around and I may see there must be about 10,000 trees there, 2 or 3 habitat poles. There's a lot of dead wooded type of trees that are still there, but they've gone past being useful for the environment. Yeah. That rotted out. A bird couldn't live in them as such or anything like that. It's a shame to see very little planning from local councils to go into areas such as Heaton Park and to make those decisions.
But then I say it is difficult for councils as well, because they've got to balance out, as you say, the risk. They've got to balance out the expectations of the general public, and a lot of the time the general public want to see a really nicely manicured, clean, tidy park. Okay. And the local council is going to be under huge amounts of pressure, budgetary pressure, reputational pressure, and it can be quite difficult to say to people, well, I know it doesn't look great, but this is doing all sorts of good things for invertebrates, whatever it is. A lot of people still don't care about that.
Yeah. What did you do before you joined the AA?
I was at Transport for London for about 10 years as the Arboricultural and Landscape Manager there. Before that, I worked as a tree officer and a sort of assistant tree officer in a couple of London boroughs. Yeah. So, mainly tree officer stuff and tree management stuff, and a bit of kind of policy and strategy, that kind of thing.
That must be a bit of a step up to go from being a tree officer for London and then joining over to the AA. What was it like actually working in London? I've been 2 or 3 times, and I've looked at the trees and went, How would you manage like the trees without causing absolute bedlam in the town?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's lots of pressures on people managing trees anywhere, but London is particularly high pressure because of the volume of people. Whatever, 8.5 million people live there, and obviously millions more visit as well. So there is a lot of pressure there. I wouldn't say this is a step up from being a tree officer. I think tree officer is a fantastic job. I absolutely loved it. I think there's it's such a special job. That sort of custodian of the urban trees, that management where you're responsible for what happens to them, and you're looking after them for a bit. You're balancing the risk and the benefits. You're dealing with the local authorities, dealing with contractors and consultants. It's a really, really great job to do. But I've done it for about 10 years. I wanted a different challenge. I did fancy getting out of London. So this was a great opportunity as well.
Has working for the AA opened up any aspects of the industry you never really knew much about?
I wouldn't say it's opened up aspects I didn't know much about, but it's certainly, my role at the AA is to represent the whole profession. And, the bulk of my experience is in tree management. I've never been a consultant. I've never climbed professionally. I've never run a contracting business. I've not been an academic or a trainer, or I've not worked in a nursery. So there's huge amounts of the industry that I've never worked in. I guess working for the association has opened up more people that I can speak to, to learn about that. But yeah, it's great. We've got such a diverse industry. There's so many different career paths there. And one of the fantastic things about the AA is we represent all of those different aspects. So for me, I get to talk to loads of great people who work in lots of different parts of the business.
With it being, it's not a big industry. It's about 30,000 tree surgeons, give or bounce. But it's big and it's not big at the same time. How do you know what needs to be done next?
Well, I don't know if working out what needs to be done next is based on the sort of number of people. We can only ever do what we think's right, and we listen to our members. We try and respond to what they're saying and what they're asking for. I think the thread that connects a lot of the problems that we face wherever we work in arboriculture is this lack of public understanding and this lack of awareness. People don't know what arboriculture is. They can't say it. When I speak to people, you meet for the first time, they say, "What do you do?" And I say, "Oh, I work with trees."
Yeah.
They either laugh or they go, "Oh, you're a tree surgeon." I say, "Oh, no, I'm not a tree surgeon. I do it." And you try and explain it until we cut through to the general public, so they can understand what we do and that they can understand what we do is important. That we're not really going to get anywhere with what we want to achieve. So I think whether it is contractors, tree surgeons trying to be taken seriously or trying to be given more respect on the site when they get there, or whether it's tree officers trying to get more funding and better budgets, or if it's consultants wanting to demonstrate that they're the experts at report writing or subsidence, whatever it is, none of that's really going to happen until we get to a point where we're understood and appreciated by the general public.
Because every tree surgeon face it, you go, "I'm an arborist." Well, what's that? Well, I'm a tree surgeon. Oh, yeah, I know exactly what that is. I've always said if you work on the ground and you climb the trees, you're a tree surgeon. And when you really start to understand the business and you've probably read half of the books, that's where I go, now you're an arborist. Because you're practicing every aspect of the industry. You're not just focused on, right, I need to go up there, I need to do a 20% reduction, I need to either grind that stump out. It's going to the next level of the consultancy aspect. And then either going down the consultancy route, ecological route, or even looking at becoming a tree officer like you've done in the past. I've always asked this question to people who have gone up the ladder. What was it like when you got that news? Was there a bit of a process? Did you have to go through multiple interviews?
For this particular role?
Yeah.
So I joined the association in summer 2019 as technical director, and then I became chief exec in summer 2021. But yeah, there was an interview process. I think I had about 3 interviews and lots of applications, lots of different things going on. It was, I had to kind of think whether or not to go for it. It's a very different role to what I've done before. I got into this profession because I love trees, not because I love spreadsheets and budgets, and you have to accept that when you get a more senior role, then you have to do a lot of that as well. But I went for it, and I'm very glad I went for it. And yeah, it was a long old process, but I was delighted to be appointed in the end.
So a bulk of your early career working here has had to deal with coronavirus then, hasn't it?
Yeah, I've worked at the association for far longer now with coronavirus in the world than previously. So I started in August 2019. We sort of sent everyone home and kind of shut down. Well, not shut down, we kept working, but changed the way we worked in about March 2020, I guess. So yeah, I've been in the new world for longer than the old world. Yeah,
I know, because a year ago we wouldn't be able to do this. We'd have to be over Zoom or anything like that. Was that your first biggest challenge you had to deal with?
It was certainly a big challenge. Yeah, I think it was a challenge, but it's a bit sort of cliche. It was also an opportunity. There was, the COVID forced us all to work very differently. Yeah. It allowed us to bring in some changes that I think would have been brought in at some point anyway, but we kind of had to do it. Yeah. It has been fantastic for some things. Obviously, saying that with the understanding it's been horrendous for lots of people for lots of reasons, and many people have been extremely unwell, so I'm not belittling that. But in terms of an organisation, it's opened up great opportunities for things like webinars. The technology's always been there, but we'd never done it before. Yeah. Online training for things like the AC scheme, whether you can do pre-interviews with people and online. We reacted pretty quickly. Each area of the business responded differently, and we started prioritising what we could shift on to do it virtually. And I think we responded very, very well. Yeah,
because when I started off, there was not a lot online that you could look at, you could research. You got the forums, then you got the YouTube videos that you should never really watch. And then the next minute, you guys were producing all this content. It was like, well, why didn't you do this 10 years ago? And you go, well, we could all meet up 10 years ago. Yeah. We could sit down. It's a very hands-on industry. There's certain aspects of the industry you can look at a book and you can go to the classroom and learn about. But a lot of it, you have to be outside. You have to see the trees. You've got to see the fungus, and it's your face-to-face meetings. You can never beat a face-to-face meeting as well.
Yeah, that's right. And when now everyone's doing webinars. Webinars are 10 a penny now, and you can get loads and loads of online content, and some of it's absolutely fantastic. When COVID hit, as you said, there wasn't really anything out there. We were able to respond quite quickly. We were lucky in that a lot of the content from previous conferences, for example, had been recorded. So we had this huge archive of material which was available online. We were able to start kind of knocking some of that together. We did a little series called Tree of the Best, where we took like 3 different presentations from different conferences, and we put them together, and I did a little introduction and topped and tailed it. And while we were getting that stuff out there, we were making plans to start producing new content, which is when we started doing the webinars. Now, we've done more than 60 webinars now. I think there's been more than 16,000 people have watched them from 142 countries, I think we're on at the moment. And so we managed to build up a pretty good audience and a pretty good reputation for delivering that content. And it was partly to keep people's CPD up when they couldn't do anything. But it was also to try and foster a bit of a sort of community, spirit. Everyone was feeling pretty isolated for quite a while. And using the technology available, we hopefully gave people something to do and to keep them in touch with other people.
Was it a challenge to take more in-person courses and take them online as such? Was there ever a hurdle where you thought, no, we can't actually transition this over?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some courses lend themselves really well to online learning. Those courses where you used to travel to a room and you would sit in a room with a group of people listening to a trainer, and then you'd all go home at the end of the day. That is relatively easy to transfer online. I do think you lose a bit online because it's nice to have those conversations. A lot of the work, a lot of the learning is over the coffee break, maybe, or over lunch or whatever. So I think we've missed that stuff. But then there is a load of courses, something like professional tree inspection or whatever, where you're getting out there, you're looking at trees, you're prodding, cavities, and you're looking at everything. You can't really do that online. Yeah. So we had to make some decisions early on, which ones we could move online, which ones would be more difficult to do, and try to respond to the needs of the members as well, and what the members were saying they wanted. But I'm very pleased that we didn't just say, we can't do that anymore, let's stop. Yeah. We had a pretty short break, really. There was probably only a month or two we weren't doing a lot of output, but during that time a lot of work was going on to get ready so we could run with it. And whether it's moving online, whether it's creating our own training room here at the Malt House, moving our conference online, we responded well.
No. You also moved the ARB show online as well.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, the ARB show, unfortunately, couldn't go ahead for 2 years for obvious reasons. And again, we wanted to, the Arb Show is really important to us. We want it to be a success. It's a difficult one to move online because part of the Arb Show is walking around, hopefully in the sunshine, looking at different stores, looking at the kit, picking stuff up, testing it. And you can't replicate that online, and we know that. But what we could do was create a space online for our suppliers and exhibitors and the people who do participate to at least, again, be able to share some of what they're doing with other people.
Was it a really tough decision to go, right, we've tried, we can't do it, we can't have the Arb Show this year? Because when the news came out, including me and everyone else, we were like, oh, okay, no beer, no going around looking at all the shiny kits.
Yeah, it was terrible. I mean, where were we? Sort of March, April time is when coronavirus was obviously going to cause a big problem. Arb Show was supposed to be in May. I guess the first Arb Show was almost a bit easier because the way the restrictions were going, we clearly didn't really have a choice.
I think were we still in lockdown or were we coming out of?
Yeah, I get confused when it all happened, but that was a relatively easy decision in some ways because we just kind of couldn't do it. Yeah. Our conference was planned for September, so it's hard to remember now, isn't it? But back in March 2020, we were thinking, well, it might be a couple of months. Well, I'm sure we'll be able to do conference.
I think everyone thought that.
And then it got nearer and nearer, and it came to the point when we just thought, well, no, we can't do conference. We need to pull conference. Then you're thinking, well, it's all going to be fine next year. We'll do Arb Show 21. We'll do conference 21. That won't be a problem. And then you get to it and go, we can't do this either. And that became more difficult then. And then what the problem you then get is trying to sort of predict stuff in the future. So conference 2021 we thought we could do in person. Maybe we could have done in person technically. I think the restrictions at the time were relaxed enough that we probably could have held an in-person conference, but you can't make the decision a month beforehand for something like that. You've got to make the decision months and months beforehand.
How long does it take for you to go, right, we're in September, we're getting ready for Arb Show in May? What's the timeline for it?
Well, really, the way it normally works, and because of coronavirus, I've only been to one conference as an AA employee, and I've not been to any Arb Shows as an AA employee, but I think it was almost a constant year-long process. So when conference was done, the first week after conference was done in September, the planning would really kick in for Arb Show in May, and then straight after Arb Show was done, you'd be going on for conference. But it kind of runs all year round. To use conference as an example, you'll announce the theme for the following year's conference at the conference you're doing that year. So the planning for the next conference is often happening before that conference has happened.
I barely plan these podcasts about a week in advance.
I
could never do that.
That's normally how I like to try and work as well. Yeah. But these are big events. They're important events to people. And you've got loads and loads of exhibitors. You've got thousands of people coming for an Arb Show. You've got hundreds of people coming for conference. And people need to plan stuff. And that's what really went out the window for the last couple of years. It was just really difficult to plan.
So I wouldn't say you've teamed up with the enemy, but news came out earlier this year. You've joined up with the APF. Mm-hmm. Talk me through the process. Was it just a phone call? Well, I said, we're going to come to the APF this year. Let's all get together.
Well, there'd been discussions for a while. It's the two biggest kind of arboricultural shows, if you like, and I think there'd been talks predating my time at the Arb Association about doing some kind of link-up. I think that had been discussed before. With COVID and with the Arb Show not happening for 2 years, it felt like it might be the opportunity if we're going to try something different. Yeah. This is a good year to try something different. It's a trial. We've been really open about that. We're going to see how it works. We hope it goes really well. If it doesn't go well, then we can look at doing something different in the future. But for us, really, if Arb Show is good because there's lots of exhibitors and whatever, 3,000-4,000 people go through there, APF has likely to be more than 20,000 people going through there. So you've got far more footfall for our exhibitors. You've got far more crossover between exhibitors, between delegates, and more exhibitors to be seen, more delegates there as well. So we're hoping it will retain the Arb Show character, the Arb Show feel, but it will be located as part of the wider APF program.
Is there anything specific that you were wanting to do in the last 2 years that you thought, right, we're going to include it in this year's show coming up?
Well, the climbing competitions, of course, we want to be bringing back because we haven't been able to do any of that stuff. And we've also got scope at APF to do some presentations and sort of best practice and sharing knowledge and all that kind of stuff as well. So it's all the stuff we've just missed that we've always done at ARB Show. The trick for us is going to be trying to make sure we can keep that sort of character of the event, which we don't want to be lost or diluted too much. But APF are really on board with it. They're really keen. We're really keen. We're going to see how it goes, and we hope it's going to be a great success.
If it is a great success, will it be staying with the APF? So will it be every 2 years, or will you be looking to still keep the ARB Show in, say, 2023?
We just honestly need to see how it pans out. Yeah, I could tell you something, but it would be wouldn't be based on anything. APF is every 2 years, so if it goes really well and if we can come to an agreement with APF, we could look to host it with APF every other year. We would then have to look and see what we did in that in-between year and when in the year it would be, because obviously if you're doing a big event like that, you kind of want it to be at the same time every year. Conference has always been in the first week of September. APF is at the end of September. Yep. So organising, I said earlier, these events each take months and months to organise. So to try and pull off 2 in the same month is a little bit tricky. Yeah. But then do you have ARB Show at APF in September, then the following year ARB Show in May, and then the following year back in September? Yeah. That doesn't really get... So we need to work out what is best to do. But the first step of that really is seeing how it works this year.
Right. When are you bringing the ARB Show north? Because us northerners, we get a little bit worried once we come past Birmingham.
Well, we have an active northern branch. A little bit further north, we've got a very active Scottish branch as well. So there's hopefully all sorts of scope for events up there. I would love to see ARB Show up north. I'd love to see conference up north. 100%. I think it would be great.
Because everything always seems to happen, like any events, even when we do different events, it's like the NEC or below, and it's like, okay, right, 3-4 hour drive, let's get down there. But we've always, we're northerners typical, we've always thought, get it, like somewhere a little bit north, out towards top end of Newcastle way, maybe somewhere like really completely different. I can't remember, when did the Forestry have the Forestry Expo? Was that 20? I can't remember what year it was, because they had their own little mini forest show right up in Scotland somewhere, and that was even further away for us. But just give the team a nudge, say the Northerners want you up there.
We absolutely love to do more stuff up north, 100%. So to take Conference an example, we were in Exeter for a few years with Conference because it's a fantastic venue but can be very difficult for people to get to. Conference this year is going to be in Loughborough, so we're kind of moving up to the Midlands. Yeah. And we'd love to go further north with all of it.
Awesome. Right, let's go on to some of more challenging questions. So, being in the industry, so the ARB Association's been around, correct me if I'm wrong because my research isn't always on point, 1970...
64, I think.
64, I see, I'm miles off already. So with it's been around since 1964, why do the general public still not know enough? Like, hasn't that been enough time to get out there?
Yeah, good question. I don't really know is the answer to that. I mean, I will give you as honest and straightforward answers as I can to any questions, but I can only really comment on what's happened since I've been here. I think the word arboriculture is a real challenge. People don't know what it means, like I say. If you think of the equivalent of arboriculture is silviculture for forestry, but then they've got that word forestry. Everyone knows what forestry is. Not many people probably know what silviculture is, but there's that word forestry, and they all get that. Arboriculture, they don't know what that is, but we haven't got that kind of word underneath it. We've not got that sort of next tier down word that people get. So tree care is probably the closest I can think that communicates that to people. But I don't know. I think perhaps over the years we've maybe been quite inward looking. I think we've perhaps been a bit too focused on telling ourselves how important trees are. And I've been to many events over the years, not just for the ARB Association, for the profession in general, where you'll get a group of tree people or get together in a room for a couple of days and we all tell each other how fantastic trees are, and then we go home. And that's great. And I love those
no one
events,
else knows about
and
it.
I never want to get rid of those events. But we need to be getting out there to the general public. We need to be telling the general public about this. We need to tell the politicians about it. We need to be speaking to other disciplines, whether it's landscapers or engineers or whoever it may be. And that's what we're trying to do now. That's probably our main priority now.
Because the only way I've ever been able to compare it is to like the Gas Safe Engineer scheme. So everyone knows about it. And it's a case of, right, now's the time to really push the ARB Association to go with that. But like I sit here and go, what do you do? Do you lobby members in Parliament? Do you just do a nationwide TV campaign? But obviously there's budgets, you've got to get a return on it. Yeah. It's not something you can just throw hundreds of thousands, even millions at it to get everyone to raise up. Because even now, no one knows it. We're in 2022, and it's getting to that point where, well, people can sit there and go, well, the Arbor Association's been around for donkey's years. Like, what have they done? Are they having the little consultants meetings going, oh, we need to look at implementing this legislation? Or is that now changing to where you're going, right, we have to build this up as a whole industry and cover everyone on it?
Yeah, okay, there's probably a few questions in that, I think. We do have what is both a challenge and an opportunity at the Arbor Association, in that we represent and work with and for the whole profession. And it is such a diverse profession, that's quite a challenging thing. Yeah. And I think probably since the association was founded, you will have contractors saying, well, they only care about consultants, and you'll have consultants saying, well, they only care about contractors, and then you'll have tree officers saying, well, they only care about contractors and consultants. So it's difficult to steer that path through in which people realise, we are trying to do everything we can. I sometimes compare it a bit to the BBC. You get your job is to please everyone all the time, and the BBC will always be accused by the right of being too left, and they'll be told by the left they're too right, and it's probably good if everyone's shouting at you, you're probably
in the middle, then
getting that path down the middle. So that's the first thing. I think it's really difficult. It's difficult to keep everyone happy. Public awareness of arboriculture and the importance of tree professionals is, like I say, probably our main priority at the moment. We've got a huge opportunity at the moment, and there's been an opportunity for the last couple of years where trees are so high up the public and political agenda. Everyone's talking about trees. They all love trees. You would not get a politician trying to get elected saying, I don't like trees. That's become so fixed in the mind now. And that's great, but all they're really talking about is tree planting. Tree planting figures, tree planting targets. There's not that much thought about the aftercare, the maintenance. We've tried to almost move away from talking about tree planting to tree establishment, because what we're trying to say is sticking a tree in the ground is fantastic, but years of work have gone into that beforehand in the nursery trade, in the tree offices maybe, or landscapers selecting that tree. Then you've got to grow it and supply it and plant it. Then it's got to be looked after for another couple of years, watering, young tree maintenance, mulching, and then hopefully decades in the future of people inspecting the trees, people working on the trees, pruning, everyone. So it's trying to get people to understand that there is a whole profession that sits behind the success of a tree getting to maturity, and that's arboriculture. Do
you think people are just too impatient? Like, to plant a tree and they're expecting it to grow 50 foot overnight?
Totally, 100%. Ted Green often talks about the fact that we work in tree time. We work with tree time. We work with organisms that live, hopefully, for hundreds of years.
I've never heard that before, tree time.
Tree time.
I like that.
The best piece of advice that Ted ever gives me is, John, think in tree time.
Yeah.
And we deal with trees that live for hundreds of years, and we are forced to operate within human lifespans, which is difficult enough, but political lifespans, which are even shorter. We have to work in political cycles. So we've all had this discussion, with a member of the public, when you're saying, well, it's going to look a bit rough for 20 years, but when you see it then, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. And they think, well, I don't really care about 20 years. I want it to look nice now. Politicians, trying to persuade a politician to spend money on something and saying, in 50 years' time, we are absolutely going to reap the benefits of this. Most politicians are not interested in what happens in 50 years' time. They want something to happen for the next election. So it's difficult for us to make the case for stuff, because tree planting's sexy. People love tree planting numbers. Mulching trees isn't sexy. Formative pruning isn't sexy. Irrigation isn't sexy.
But
and they don't care about it.
Planted 10,000 trees is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, of course it is. People love those numbers, and many of the numbers are ridiculous. There are not enough trees in Europe to satisfy the tree planting promises that we've made in this country.
What are the tree planting promises? Because it's in like the millions. It's something ridiculous.
Well, we had the 2019 general election campaign when all the different political parties were sort of outbidding each other with the numbers of trees being promised. What's more worrying for us at the moment, I think, is that the most recent government tree planting figures are being given in hectares. Now, if you give tree planting figures in hectares, you're not talking about arboriculture, you're talking about forestry or woodland creation. And they're both really, really important. But as arborists, the work we do will never be respected as long as tree planting targets are given in hectares. Because I've been working in arboriculture and planting trees for 15 years or whatever it is now. I've probably never planted a hectare of trees.
Yeah.
So we've got that challenge as well. We've got to make sure people understand that arboriculture is a completely separate profession to forestry. We're a completely separate profession to horticulture. We're different to woodland management. We do something very specific with amenity trees, and you cannot count the work you do in amenity trees in hectares.
But how do you get that across to public and the government to say, look, we are our own industry? Because we get classed with gardeners, and it's like, right, that's horticulture, that's not arboriculture. I wouldn't have a clue how to plant a pansy, and a gardener might not have a clue how to correctly prune a tree, for instance. But you talk to anyone and you go, well, you've got the gardeners, you've got the tree surgeons, and then it's all combined, and we're then called landscapers. And it's frustration. So what are your plans to... How would you even go about doing that with people?
Well, we are trying to lobby government. We're trying to lobby politicians to get them to understand that. We're trying to... so I'll give you an example. The changes to the red diesel exemptions.
I don't talk about red diesel to anyone just yet.
Yeah, well, I mean... The red diesel one is a really good example of why this is a problem, and it's something that we're trying to use as an example because, you know, as I'm sure you've seen, in changing the red diesel exemptions, the Treasury divided up the land-based sectors that work with red diesel into 3 areas, which was agriculture, horticulture and forestry. So we weren't mentioned at all. Yeah. So all of the work that is done in arboriculture was kind of split out mainly under horticulture but a bit under forestry. Yeah. And as a result, our members and just people who aren't our members, people working in arboriculture are really going to struggle to be able to make these regulations work, because I think this might not be 100% right, but I think it's something like if you're pruning trees in a garden or in a public park, you're exempt, you can use red diesel. Yeah. But if you're pruning trees by a road, then you're not exempt.
It's those typical government guidelines to where it reads one way, but you're meant to do it the opposite way. And you end up having to work in that grey area. At the moment, lads are confused if they can put red diesel in the chipper, but if it's on roadside, you're not allowed. But if you're on private property, you are allowed. And it's a case of... What got me was golf... landscapers on golf courses, all-day machinery is allowed to use red diesel.
Right, okay.
And it was a case of going, well, hang on, surely that industry is not bigger than the tree care industry.
Well, and this is why we're able to use this as an example, and we've actually, by the time this goes out, we may have had the meeting. We've got a meeting with the Treasury coming up soon to talk about this. We've been lobbying first of all through DEFRA, then through the Treasury, then through our local MP, who's been incredibly supportive and helpful for this. But yeah, if you're doing a council contract and you manage street trees and park trees, if you want to follow the regulations properly whilst getting the red diesel entitlement you're allowed, you need to buy a second set of kit, essentially.
Yeah. We'll be seeing wood chippers eventually with 3 fuel tanks on them. Yeah. One for the deaf, one for red, one for white.
It's really difficult, and we need to get that clarification. But one of the the government hasn't done this. Excuse me, government haven't done this deliberately. They've not gone, right, we're going to get those people working in arboriculture. They've just forgotten that we exist. Yeah. And it is the role of the Arbor Association to remind them that we exist. And hopefully through lobbying, through speaking to them, through making them aware of just how important this sector is, we will start getting that recognition. And one of the messages we're taking to government, they're talking about lots of things like, build back better and levelling up and all these different things that are being talked about at the moment. If they genuinely want to deliver lots of these benefits to people that they're saying they want to deliver, trees are going to be part of that. We saw during COVID the idea of access to green space being really important. Yeah. Some people having less access to green space than others, which takes you into the road of green equity and everything, which is all very interesting. And they've started realising this now. But it's trying to say to them, you're appreciating now that trees are multifunctional infrastructure. Trees do load of good stuff. But if you want them to grow into mature specimens that are looked after properly, you need to recognise arboriculture. And we've got to work at the cracks wherever we can. And red diesel is one of those cracks.
Yeah, again, we come through Gloucester today and we went through the town centre. And even I noticed there's not a lot of trees here. And you look at a lot of town centres nowadays and the concrete jungles. And again, it's a case of, like you summed it up perfectly, the industry's forgotten about. Mm-hmm. So the architectures will go in, the tarmac and gang will go in, and then a couple of months later, someone from the council will go, I won't mind a tree here. All right, dig it all up. Let's start all over again, and let's have a tree plantation plan involved this time.
Yeah, trees are often an afterthought, and the arborist, the consultant, whoever it may be, is often an afterthought in the process as well. So that is something we have to do, and we are doing it. We are trying to do it. Why it hasn't happened over the last 60 years, I can say that people have been trying.
Yeah.
The Arbor Association has been trying. I can tell you that. And now we are, trying to sort of up those efforts. Like I say, using our political contacts, lobbying in that way, working through as many different routes as we can. Also with our colleagues internationally, with our colleagues on groups like the Ornamental Horticulture Roundtable Group, where we sit with people like the RHS. They're on board with this. Working with those organisations. But then a really big one is the general public. We've got to get the general public to care, and we've got to get them to understand. So you'll see, hopefully you've seen our new strategic plan, which is started this year, so strategic plan 2022 to 24. And a big part of that is to promote arboriculture to the general public. We're a charity. That's one of our charitable objectives, is to promote arboriculture to the general public. And that is what we need to do. We start getting people to understand and value it, and then they can start lobbying their MPs and their councils.
Yeah.
Have you got a tree officer? No. Why? Why haven't you got a tree officer?
It's getting those extra voices out to people. So what are you doing to raise awareness? Are you doing like local events, local fêtes, local trade shows as such?
Yeah, we've started going out to quite a few more local events, whether it's things like country fairs or whether it's really small scale, like little local climate groups, that sort of thing. We're trying to get our name out there more. We're doing a lot of stuff locally. Obviously, we're based in Gloucestershire, but we operate, internationally. And we're trying to do lots of stuff down here that can be replicated by our branches and by our members across the rest of the country. We're trying to produce a lot more public-facing documentation and material. So there'll be a new guide coming out soon, which will be a guide to young tree establishment that'll have really straightforward information about where to plant a tree, how to plant the tree, what tree to plant, how to look after it after you've planted it, how to water a tree. Public facing materials, public facing documentation. Like I say, moving away from that insular, just looking at the professional market. We're always going to be interested in looking at the professional market because that's a key part of what we do. But whenever our members say to us what they want, one of the main things we're told is we want you to tell people what we do. So we are doing that. We're attending events. We're running a public event at Westonbirt in May. We're doing a brand new event called the Tree Care Forum, which is aimed just at the general public as a showcase for arboriculture. We'll be promoting, obviously, the ARB show. We're going to try and do more to promote the climbing competitions. We're trying to make sure that more people want to come into the industry, because it's not just about the people who are in this industry now. Where's that next generation of arborists coming from?
Yeah. Do you get any government funding or support as such? No. So you're fully self-funded as a charity? Yeah,
we get our money, the bulk of our income is from membership. And then also obviously the approved contractor scheme, from selling publications and the books that we publish, from events and training and all that kind of thing.
The best thing the Arbor Association's ever come out with is those technical guides.
Yeah, they're brilliant.
I've noticed you got the third one. The third one's the one I'm missing, because I got all the others for my birthday when they first came out, and I was just like, I would have loved this. And honest, I could not praise Chris. I can't think of the other gentleman's name. I can't praise the authors of those books enough, because I got them and I went, I needed this in college. And I've said every great arborist or any arborist or anyone coming into the industry, get those books as your foundation. They should definitely be your foundation books. Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
It's a great achievement, and it's the result of a lot of hard work by a lot of people, some of them working here at the association, some of them external. I can take absolutely zero credit for them, I must say. All the work was done before I arrived.
So on to the next question. I'm going to find it because I got myself lost. The contractor scheme. This I've had so many questions, and I went, right, I know certain things, but I want to go down, let me get it all out, let me speak to people. What is the contractor scheme? What does it mean to the contractor and to the end customer as such?
Okay, well, first of all, I think what I'd say is quite important for people to understand. It's almost like a kind of clarification, I guess, because there'll be a lot of people out there who think, well, the Arbor Association do the scheme, to make money. Basically, it's a big profit generating thing. I can tell you, we don't make a lot of money on the scheme. We don't do the scheme for money. As I say, we're a charity. Everything we bring in is reinvested into it, and the scheme doesn't bring in a massive chunk of money for us. It is not about that. It's about raising standards. That's the purpose of the scheme. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But it's there to raise standards, and some fantastic work has been done over a number of years. You'll know some of the people involved, Paul Smith, Polly Stone, and many of our assessors who are absolutely brilliant to take the scheme to where it is now, and we are investing more in the scheme than we've ever invested before to look to take it to the next level. So for me, the scheme is really there's two purposes to the scheme. One is to raise standards and to set a sort of benchmark that says if you're working in arboriculture in terms of health and safety and in terms of tree work, this is what good looks like. This is what you should be going for. That's the first thing. And the second thing is to really offer reassurance to the general public and to tree managers in an unregulated industry that they are getting someone who is reputable. We all know there's many people working in arboriculture who are not reputable. Yeah. We have no control over those people because they're not going to be joining the association. They cause damage to our reputation, they cause damage to our trees, they put their employees and the general public at risk. And as things stand, the only real way that exists for the general public to have assurance that they're engaging someone who is a responsible and good contractor is the scheme. Now, it's very important, I would also say, the fact that we would like to think that if you're on the scheme, it's because you're good. That is what we'd like. That's the point. There are loads of fantastic contractors out there who are not members of the scheme. Yeah. The fact that you're not a member of the scheme does not mean you're not good. The ARB Association would never say that. And also, I've seen some of your previous interviews when the impression's almost well, the ARB Association say that if you want certain contracts, you need to be an approved contractor. That's true to an extent, but largely not. I've not really heard that said. That there are a couple of boroughs, for example, or a couple of local authorities that do say if you want to tender for work in their areas, you need to be ARB approved contractor. There's not that many of them, but there are some. But I think for a contractor, again, probably two main things really. A lot of contractors I speak to who see the scheme as being a benefit, one reason they give is because of the increased business. It's really hard to quantify that, but I know that as a tree officer, if someone comes to you, and people come to you all the time, a couple of times a week probably, a member of the public will say, can you recommend a good tree surgeon? And a tree officer will say, no, we're not allowed to do that. But if you go on the ARB Association website, you can find someone near you. So I've got no doubt that it does generate business for people. But the other reason, and possibly the more important reason, is what some contractors have said to me, which is that it kind of keeps them on track. Yeah. It's hard to know if what you're doing is the right thing sometimes. You can kind of do what you're thinking is the right thing, but you can do that for a few years without anyone looking in externally. You can easily kind of drift off. And the ARB approved contractor scheme is a way in which every 2 years, and plus your desktop audit, someone externally is coming in and scrutinising your business and saying, this is what we think you're doing right, this is what we think you can improve. And I think that is a really important benefit of being on the scheme.
Because you mentioned it, a large proportion it is an unregulated industry. And I had that same experience of starting my business, and then I'd have to look at other industries to go, right, so how did they do an invoice? Okay, how do you get work? And you can go on and on and on and get completely confused and lost. I didn't actually get told when I was in college that the ARB Association existed. Yeah. And I'm in college getting taught by industry professionals. It must have been a year, maybe even 2 years after I'd completed my qualifications and went, oh, there's an association, well, what's this? And I downloaded all the free materials, the risk assessment, the method statements, and thought, well, this is fantastic. And then you get onto certain forums, and then you guys get a slating. I'll be honest, I've gave you guys a bit of a slating in the past because I've went, well, what did they really do? Because all I ever see, and I've always had the same stance. I don't hate the arboriculture. I've got nothing against them. I just don't understand what they would do for me as a contractor at the time. And I was like 20, 21 years old at the time. And you'd speak to other people who have had a bad experience and who would sit there and go, oh no, they're just in it for the money. It's an old boys club. And you for me, I took that information as God's gift because I went, oh, these have been in the industry 40 years.
Yeah, sure.
And it was only a couple of years later where I'd see their level of work and I'd go, okay, that's why you're not approved, because that work is absolutely shocking. So people won't believe it, but I do see a lot of benefits. I love the ARB show. I love the technical guides that have come out. So yeah, I think it's trying to overcome those barriers of what other people have said against the Arboricultural Association and making your own agenda as such. I do think every tree surgeon needs to be above the BS standards. They need to have that level of, one, customer care, two, caring for the trees, and actually just not going out and hacking stuff and just thinking, oh, I've got a chainsaw, I can do wherever I like and all of that jazz. Would you ever want to see it become mandatory to join the association as such?
No. I think that some kind of regulation would be a good thing, I think. It is very, very difficult when anyone can go and buy themselves a chainsaw and call themselves a tree surgeon.
I was about to ask, what does that regulation mean for you? Does that ban outright sales of chainsaws?
Oh, I think there'd be a lot of detail to work out and exactly what would have to happen under a regulatory system, which is one of the reasons it's probably never happened, because it would be very, very complex. I think that there should be more regulation, as I've said, for health and safety, for customer confidence, for the good of the trees, and for the reputation of our whole industry. I would never say I think it should be mandatory for people to be members of the ARB Association. Yeah. I think people should have the choice, to be members of whatever group or association that they want to be members of. And like I say, it's not about getting the money in from the members or whatever, although getting the money in from the members is what allows us to do the stuff we do. It is about raising standards. It is about arboriculture. And a lot of what we do isn't just to benefit our members. A lot of what we do, most of what we do, is to benefit the profession, whether people are members or not. And we do want to move away slightly from that kind of traditional transactional relationship. I give you money and you give me stuff. And that's fine. And we never want to get rid of that, because that's part of being a member of an organisation. But there's another part of being a member of an organisation, that is, being part of something. It's being part of a group of people who are all interested in the same thing. Mm. It's about adding weight to numbers, because when we lobby Parliament, when we talk to people, we say, well, we've got around 3,000 members, we've got just under 3,000 paying members, just over 3,000 members in total. The more members we've got, the more weight we've got. If we were saying we had 10,000 members, that takes you up to another kind of level. So, of course, membership numbers are very important. But it's not just about that. So, yes, I'd like everyone to be a member of the ARB Association, but I want them to be a member of the ARB Association because they want to. Yeah. Not because they have to.
Yeah. So you speak, you got like just under 3,000 paying, just over 3,000 collective. Say people don't want to get involved with the ARB Association, but they do want to show their support, they do want to get their voices behind you guys as such. How can they go about doing that?
Well, if they don't want to be members, then they're still more than welcome to get in touch and tell me what they want to say. We're never going to keep everyone happy. We're always going to receive criticism, and that's fine. What I will always say, I won't pretend that we'll always make the right decision, because I certainly won't get 100% of my decisions right, but I'll always be able to justify what I'm doing. And I want to hear from the members what they think we're doing right, what they think we're doing wrong. I want to hear from people who aren't members and why. That's what I want. But what's really important, if people aren't happy about something, they can come and speak to us. John@trees.org.uk. Drop me an email. Give me a call. Come down and visit. Yeah. We can deal with that. We can work together to improve things. What's not helpful is when keyboard warriors sometimes will get on there and go, oh, the ARB Association's rubbish. I think they're crap. Yeah. That's fine. It's entirely up to you to say that, and that's not a problem. But that's not going to change anything. Come and talk to us. Come down here, have a chat, or I'll come to you. If people want me to come out there, I'll come to you. And we can talk about ways we can improve. But there's ways and means of doing it that are productive and constructive, and there's ways that are just kind of sniping from the sidelines. It's very easy to criticise stuff. It's more difficult to create stuff, And we don't have the luxury here of just criticising stuff, because we're the people who have to create it.
I don't think people realise it is a small team. It's not hundreds of people. You're not in some massive office.
Nope.
It is undervalued in the industry.
Yeah.
But how do you get through to that group of voices that want to say, oh, I've got this idea, and those keyboard warriors come after you? I started this podcast to rule them out, say, look, this is honest advice. Mm-hmm. You can listen to what I say. I get the professionals on. We have the conversation. You can go and you can learn something from it. And this is what I said to Steve in the marketing department. It's like, I want to get John on because I've got a platform. We can have the voice. You've just clearly shown it's not that old boys club anymore, to where you have to pay the membership to have a voice. No. You just reach out to you,
totally,
drop you an email, and we're in the 21st century now.
The whole, I think people have probably always thought the old boys network is maybe a bit worse than it is, and I've not really seen that in the association. But any vestiges of that are left, we are getting rid of. That's not what it's about now, and we are opening the doors to people. We want more people to be involved, more people engaged in whatever capacity they want to be, and that is a really key part of what we're doing going forward. And I'll give you, I'll give you an example with the AC scheme actually, which is, I say, we've got some fantastic people working on it for the association. We've got our network of assessors who've been great and continue to do brilliant work for us. But we really want to expand our network of assessors. So what we've done recently, we've started advertising to ask people if they want to become assessors, to get involved and become assessors. Now, I think historically there may have been this idea that, you'd only become an assessor if you kind of got a tap on the shoulder sort of thing, and that might always
stonemasons.
So exactly that kind of setup. And if anybody out there is interested in becoming an assessor for the ARB-AC scheme, drop us an email. We will review an application and we can arrange interviews and we can look at doing it. This is an open and transparent thing. We want critical voices. We want people to be telling us when we're doing things right and when we're doing things wrong. You're
like smashing it on the nail on the head for me, because I wanted to come down and go, right, because I've had this, it's been put on me, it's been put on other colleagues in the industry, it's an old boys club, and I've always stood aside going, no, not until I've sat down and actually spoken to them, because you go to the trade shows and you go, well, they're not hiding away, they're not all in anoraks at the weekend specifically going, this tree needs this and this. And again, when all the webinar stuff came out, it was like, it was a bit of a shock to go, they're finally moving in the 21st century, they're uploading stuff online. And you still have those people in the background. You eventually go, well, yeah, you're in the background. Yeah. And everyone else in the industry is finally moving forward with it all.
And look, we'll, like I say, we're never going to keep everyone happy all the time. And that's fine. I think the webinars was maybe a bit of a turning point for us in a way, because when COVID hit, different organisations responded in different ways, and I don't know if there was really a right way or a wrong way. It's just people had to find their own way under very difficult circumstances, and the webinars was the way that we found of connecting with people. But there were, when we started running them, we started getting sort of 200-300 people watching the webinars, and so there was a section of people saying, well, you should charge for these. If you charge for them, you'll get money in for that. And then there were other organisations who were just doing webinars for their members, and we took a very definite stance early on, which was that all of our webinars would be free at the point at which we broadcast them. We might make them a member-only benefit later. Yeah. We might have single-day sort of standalone events you have to pay for, but the webinars would be free for anyone to watch. And that is because we wanted to share information and knowledge. We wanted to bring some of the best speakers in the world to people who maybe wouldn't ordinarily get the chance to go and see them, and we wanted to open the doors in that way. And something really interesting that's happened is that when people are renewing their membership, and I have to say, we've got record membership numbers. Our membership numbers are going up. And a lot of other membership organisations have got declining membership numbers. Ours have gone up through coronavirus. And one of the reasons is people like what we're about. Yep. They like our approach. They like our attitude. And what's been interesting is people have been signing up as members, and as people have been renewing as members, we ask them why they're members, why they're interested, what they like most. And one of the most popular things that people have said is, we think the webinars are really good. They're worth the membership on their own. It's a great member benefit. Now, it's not a member benefit. And they know it's not a member benefit, because it doesn't matter if you're a member or not. You can watch the webinars. And I think what they mean, and having spoken to a few of them, I think what they mean is that not that it's a monetary benefit. They've paid us money and we've delivered, they've got webinars in exchange, but they can see where their money's going.
Yeah.
These are members who want us to be spreading the word about arboriculture, and they can see where that money's going. They can see that more people, I think, know about arboriculture than have done. More people know about the Arboricultural Association than they have done. And they are buying into an ethos and a way of doing stuff that some people are never going to want, but a lot of people do. And you're never going to get there by being an old boys club. We are getting there by being open and by being transparent. Our strategy is there that sets out quite clearly what we're planning to do, where we're planning to go. There's a pinboard over there with a list of about 100 actions that we're planning to deliver that is on that board, and that you can go and have a look at, and you can do a piece later about what's on there, and it is completely open and transparent where we're trying to go. And we're listening to our members, and we're listening to people who aren't our members, and we are always striving to be better.
And I feel it's trusted content as well. It's not taught by some random person who stood next to a tree and you just think, oh, that's not what I got taught by the book. It's people who have worked in this industry or involved in this industry, to where you can go on the webinar and go, I can actually use that information. It's not just some random YouTube video that's being produced. It's got the backing of you guys behind it as well.
Yeah, hopefully so. And it's bringing a diversity of voices, and it's putting challenging stuff out there. Yeah. We put stuff out that people go, that's nonsense, we don't agree with that, we don't like that. We're not saying that we are buying into or, supporting every single thing that's saying on the webinars, but we are bringing different perspectives to it. Yeah. And again, if someone, when this has happened a couple of times, people say, oh, well, you should get such and such on there talking about this, or I come on there and talk about this. People can do that.
Yeah, it is funny because we get people saying, oh, come on the podcast and talk about it, and we'll get down to it and go, oh, well, I'm not too sure. Now, it's a case of, look, if you want to come on this podcast, you need to be really up there, because we have a lot of people that listen to it. Yeah, I just want to go back to the scheme again. I'm thinking, I've listened to the podcast, Tom's opened my eyes, John's opened their eyes. It's not what it used to be, it's what it is now and going forward. I'm thinking of becoming a contractor. How do I go about it, and what's involved in the process?
I think the best thing to do is to contact some of my colleagues here who will be able to sort of talk you through it. I mentioned that we've got more investment in the scheme than ever before. We've just recruited at the end of the summer last year Francois Suzanne, and Fran is our new business development manager, so we've got more people working on the scheme than we have done previously. And Fran and Paul and Polly will be able to talk you through the process of application. But it's really, to kick off with, it's just talking to us about it. We can give you some advice, give you some tips. Someone can come out, see if you're kind of ready or whatever, because we're not in the business of people going for it and then not getting it and then having to go for it again. We want people to be going for it when they're ready, and we want to help support people through that process. So the best thing to do really is contact us. Again, it's fran@trees.org.uk is the best email to get on. But excuse me, we are also rewriting the scheme handbook, so it sets out more clearly in a more user-friendly way the benefits of being on the scheme. We're looking at how the modular system works. We're looking at if we're checking the right things. Are we looking at all the right things? Are there areas we can expand on? Are there areas that aren't needed so much? We're looking at how we work with stuff like SIP certification. We are recruiting more assessors. We're going to try and review how the payment model works, so it's a bit more consistent instead of peaks and troughs. We're looking at absolutely every aspect of how the scheme works, and not just the scheme, the whole organisation. Yeah. But every single aspect of how it works, and we are going to see how we can create something that is building on all of the great work that's happened for many, many years, but then making it sort of future-proof, so that when we do start getting 400, 500, 600 people signing up, we've got the infrastructure there to deal with that too. Yeah.
It's not often, because I get to speak to quite a lot of different CEOs in different roles, just because I've been mentored by some amazing people in the past. And you'll see certain CEOs and they're in the 70s, and you'll go, you haven't changed anything in 20 years, and you've come in and it feels like you've taken everything that's been done and then you've went, right, instead of it just being like this, we need to put her up here, and now's the time to do it. You give, I don't want to sound like too cheesy, but you give that breath of fresh air at last. So where you think, it doesn't actually just sound like he's saying it, it sounds like he's actually doing it while he's saying it. And you don't get that often from people.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, thanks. I should say that I'm just a person sat here talking, but the work is done by an amazing team that is here, and we also have a great board of trustees, and we have lots of volunteers and everything, so there's a lot of people working on it. And we're building, as you said, we're building on work that's been done for a very, very long time, and we need to accept and acknowledge all the great work that's been done for years. But we do need to change. We need to open up. We need to change the way we do things. And I'm very lucky. I've got a fantastic staff team here. They're just brilliant. My colleagues here are great. We've got a really forward-thinking, dynamic group of trustees who are really up for all the different ideas we're putting forward. And we've got an opportunity because we've got, people are talking about trees. They might not always be talking about the right bit about trees. They might not always be talking about trees in the way we want to talk about it, but they're talking about the fact that trees are good. And that is an incredible opportunity for an organisation like ours, and should be an incredible organisation for the whole profession, because half the problem is getting people to talk about it. Yeah. They're talking about it already. So we've just got to we've got to move quickly to exploit that.
Yeah. So another industry-wide issue. I'm going to briefly touch on it because I'm still waiting. I've had no one reach out to me to come on the podcast, which is a shame. Women in arboriculture. Mm-hmm. Why is it such a problem? Why can't we get women involved in the industry?
Well, I'm probably not the best person to talk to about that, but I think we have a general problem with diversity in the profession. It's overwhelmingly male, it's overwhelmingly white, and we need to be far more representative of the communities that we serve. We've got a Women in Arboriculture group at the association, which is very active. We think it's about 10% of people working in arboriculture are women. I should imagine at the kind of contractor on the tools level, that's probably much lower. Yeah. I think sometimes you can get almost a false sense of security because given the number of women in the profession, there's sort of a disproportionate number of women in senior positions. So obviously we've got our chair, Michelle Ryan, you've got Sharon, who's president of the ICF, you've got Sarah Lom at the Tree Council, you've got Shireen Chambers at the ICF, you've got Caitlin at the ISA, and many more I haven't mentioned. But I think there's that thing where you think, lots of these organisations are run by women, so it must kind of be okay. Because and it's not. We need to change things around. How do we do it? It's really difficult. Like I say, I didn't know that arboriculture was a career option till I was in my mid-20s. I think we need to be telling everybody at a much earlier age that they can get a career working in trees. Hopefully that'll cut through some of those preconceptions. One of the most damaging preconceptions we've got is this idea that if you want to work in arboriculture, you've got to have been on the tools. You've got if you haven't pruned a tree, then you can't specify a tree job or whatever. You can't be a consultant because you haven't been a tree surgeon. That is not true.
Yeah, I'll hold my hands up. That is my conception. I've always said, well, if you've not done the job, you shouldn't teach the job.
Yeah, but I don't think it's about that at all. I never worked commercially as a tree surgeon. I was rubbish with a chainsaw when I was at college. I'd be even worse now. But when I was specifying tree work, I would often do it with the arborist. If you're saying, could you go and do this? And they go, what about this? You go, oh yeah, well maybe, what about that? And then when they're up in the tree, they've got a better view from being inside that tree than you have stood on the ground sometimes. And they'll go, well, maybe we should do this instead. And you kind of listen to it and you react to it and you respond to it. Was I a worse tree officer because I hadn't climbed professionally? It's a difficult thing to judge. I don't think so. But if you follow that conception through, if you follow that idea through, that in order to be successful in consultancy or tree officer work or teaching or whatever, you must have worked professionally as a tree surgeon, that is making our chances of getting some kind of representation and diversity even worse. It's a very reductive view. And no, I don't think it's the case at all.
Yeah. Can we get over that? Do we have to educate people within the industry? Do we have to just wait for the next generation of arborists who are open-minded, who aren't pig-headed as such, say, this is a man's industry, women can't work in it, full stop?
Well, it is a difficult one. There's absolutely no reason that women won't do just as good a job in arboriculture as men. That hopefully goes without saying now. We do need to make sure that the environment is one that everybody feels accepted and welcome into. We need to call out sexist, racist nonsense, the banter that we have, all that stuff that, it's just the way we talk. I'm sorry, you could call me a politically correct. It would have been called a few years ago woke. It would probably be written off as now. We need to get rid of all that stuff because we need this to be a profession in which everybody's respected and can work comfortably. That's what we need. So it needs to be done at lots of different levels. We need to be telling everybody that arboriculture is a place for them to work. We need to be encouraging people from a much younger age to get into it. We need to be addressing some of the really blindingly obvious stuff like kit that is purely designed for men, not for women, helmets. We need to be looking at that research. How can we get over some of those barriers that are there? Like I say, I'm not the right person to talk about this necessarily, but we have lots of fantastic women working in arboriculture who I'm sure will be able to help and assist and mentor other women trying to get into arboriculture. We've got a women arboriculture group, and there are people there to speak to who can give the best advice. But we must be an open and transparent and welcoming profession.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, there is no real place in the association for people who want to take those old-fashioned views of banter which make others feel like they don't belong here.
Because I've never understood it myself. I've never had any females work for me in any of my tree companies, and it's been a case of, well, why? And then you hang out with the lads and you think, oh well, we all swear constantly. It's massively off-putting for younger lads coming into the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think men and women are equally able to swear and go for a wee in the woods or whatever. It's more about creating an environment in which everyone can work, whatever their background is, whatever their gender, whatever their religion or race or whatever it is. This needs to be a profession that anyone can work in if they want to work in it, and they have to be made to understand you don't need to have climbed a tree in order to succeed. You don't need to be a great arborist to be a great tree officer, to be a great consultant. There is so much diversity in the roles that we've got in this profession. That's what we need to celebrate more of.
Yeah.
And if you want to work in arboriculture, there is a role for you here.
Yeah.
It won't necessarily be climbing a tree with a chainsaw.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's not just being on the tools.
No.
Consultancy, tree officer, even forestry work, for instance.
Yeah, but what I'm also very keen to get rid of is this idea. I think has somehow grown up over the years, where there's kind of a hierarchy of working in arboriculture. You've got the contractors down at the bottom, and then the next level up is some of those contractors might become tree officers.
Yeah.
And then the next level up is maybe one day you'll reach the pinnacle of being a consultant.
Yeah.
That's just not the case. There is just as much value in a tree officer as a contractor, and in a grounds person, and a consultant. We've got to get rid of this idea of there's this kind of pyramid with elite consultants at the top and then grounds people at the bottom, and it's all about trying to climb up that. That's just nonsense. We have a huge range of roles, a huge range of skill sets, and it's not going from a tree officer to consultant isn't necessarily a promotion. It's not necessarily moving up through the profession. It's just doing a different role in it. Yeah. And until we get that across to people, we're going to struggle too.
I'd love to go. Oh, sorry, I thought you were waving your hand then, just itching your ear.
Sorry.
I would love to go back to college now to see how things are being taught, if changes have been made in the 10 years. I've been involved in the industry since 2008. Start 2009, and that's the mentality I got told was apprentice, chainsaw operative, lead climber, and then that's where you'd start looking at, because your body would be at that time of its life 30, 35 years old, where your back's starting to give out. And then it was, right, you either run the business or you look at going down the consultancy route. And then from the consultancy route, it was very fixated, you could just go in the one direction. And even a couple of years into the industry, it was a case of, I didn't know this and I didn't know that. I never got taught what a tree officer was at the time. And we're only going back, when I was like 10, 12 years ago. It's very much changed. I'd love to be able to go to colleges now and go, it's great to see stuff from the Arbor Association being taught in the classes. Does that happen now? Do you have a lot of involvement in colleges?
I hope so. We don't have huge amounts of involvement in colleges. We'd like to have more. We've got an education and training committee. We do our student conferences a couple of years, which again we've not been able to do for the last 2 years, but we will be doing again. But I'd say, go to colleges, go to them, find out and ask them. Get someone on, get someone from the education side of things on.
Might get Duncan Slater from Mascot.
Get Duncan and do it.
Get him to come on. He's got a heck of a name in this. I love seeing his is it Slater's book or something that he does on LinkedIn?
The case book.
Yes, the case book.
Yeah. No, he's absolutely fantastic. There's loads of fantastic people out there. And yeah, like I say, go and ask them, go and find out what they're doing. Because that is a really important stage of it, is what we're teaching people. And like you say, when I was at Merris Wood, there wasn't really that much talk about going off to become a tree officer or going off to become a consultant. It was quite focused on people who wanted to go on the tools and go climbing.
Yeah.
And, luckily for me, because as I've said, I was rubbish at that bit, I only realised while I was there and while I was doing my work placement that there was so much more stuff you could do, so much extra stuff. But one's not better than the other. That's really important that we get rid of that. It's not better or worse than the other. They're just different roles within a diverse profession.
Okay. Right, we're going to go to my little random question section. I've got questions that I thought I can't stick anywhere. I'm going to have to stick them into their own little section. Is there going to be any more technical guides coming out in the future?
Oh, I think it's been stressful enough producing these ones, to be honest. I'm not sure if there are any more technical guides planned for the future, but we are always open to ideas for what's needed. You know, and we've had several examples of documents where someone will approach us and say, I'd like to write this document, or I think there's a gap for this document, and we can work with them, or we can commission it ourselves, or we can write it ourselves. So nothing immediately in the pipeline in terms of technical guides. We've got some more guidance notes coming. But if anyone thinks we should be doing something, again, get in touch, let us know.
Yeah. And if you haven't got the technical guides, honestly, just go buy them. I'm not here to just go do the best things in the world, but they are bloody good.
They are good.
Absolutely fantastic. What were your thoughts on the tree contractor scheme, the TC 2020, that tried to come out not that long ago?
Yeah, I didn't look into it in a huge amount of detail. I think it's obviously, if anyone out there wants to set up some kind of scheme, then that is entirely at their discretion to do that. But I think that it's a tribute, I hope, to the quality of the ARB-approved contractor scheme, that one didn't sort of get off the ground.
Yeah, because we've asked them to come on the podcast and they've completely ignored us. The second I've mentioned ALLTHINGSARB and would like to talk about the scheme, it was hang up. Mm-hmm. And it was something that we got made aware of, and I'll be honest, I kind of looked at it and went, yeah, best of luck with that. I'll just push that to the side. I looked at it, it was a non-starter.
Yeah,
I don't know anyone who's actually gone with it.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to knock anyone for trying anything different or trying anything new. I think the competition's a good thing. Competition's healthy. I don't think there'd be any issue if there was another scheme that did something of the same quality. I think that'd probably be kind of a good thing.
Yeah.
You know? But it is looking at the motivations of it. And like I say, I think there's, and I'm not talking about that particular scheme at all, because I don't know enough about it, but the motivation of running a scheme for the ARB Association is to raise standards.
Yeah.
And it would be quite easy to imagine someone forming a scheme where the motivation was profit, and in order to do that you're going to lower the standards to get more people in, and that isn't good for the profession.
One of the things that I noticed on the AA's website is the rehab for addiction. I never, because I'll compare it to America for a second. You look at America, tree work in America, I could be speaking completely out of terms, but from what I've seen from my old research, drug use and trees seem to be a lot higher on the scale than it is in the UK. Have you noticed an increase in the UK at all or anything?
Well, it's not the kind of thing that would necessarily be brought to your attention. You know, if that is happening, anecdotally, you hear over the years of stuff happening. It's never been raised with me formally as a major problem. And obviously, I hope it's not.
Yeah, because I've never come across it, but I've seen it on the website. So I was like, I didn't think it was even needed in this industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, the website tries to pull together as many resources that may be of use to the members and to others as we possibly can. And you know, that sort of rehab side of things is one of them. One of the most fantastic groups of people, and you should get them on the podcast if you haven't already, is Perennial.
Yeah, I was looking at that the other week because they do the physio stuff. I needed to get physio on my ankle, and that's how I strange enough came across it. Yeah,
well, Perennial, who are there as a charity basically for people who hit hard times and who need a bit of help. Perennial are there, and the ARB Association, we support them. It's one of the main charities we support. and they are absolutely brilliant, and you should check them out. Everybody should be aware of them, and everyone should check them out.
Do they help with mental health as well? Because I've noticed mental health is now really hitting the main headlines for people.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do, and they can signpost you towards guidance and everything you need. And yeah, they're just absolutely great. Perennial, look on their website, and you can access it through the Arboricultural Association website as well.
Yeah. On the website, do you have any form of how to start a business guide or anything like that?
I'm not sure. Our website, you may have noticed, is quite large and unwieldy, and we're in the process of reviewing the website. There's too much good stuff on there, and it can be quite difficult to navigate around it. I'm not sure if that stuff is on there, but it's certainly something we'd be interested in looking to produce. As you said, when people start out in the profession, they need that guidance. They don't necessarily know where to go, and we would love to be able to help out if we could.
Yeah, because things that every contractor should have but don't have I speak to business, go, what are your terms and conditions for working with that customer? And they look at me and go, why do I need terms and conditions? Because you're a business. When you download an app on your phone, you've signed some form of terms and conditions for it. It goes completely over the head, and I'd love to be able to do it, but I don't know where it would, to be able to build that basic resource database as such, which I did get. I'm sure I got my method statements and risk assessments. It would have either been from one of the well-known forums or from the Arbor Association
there's
itself.
Definitely some of that on there. Yeah. I mean, what I'll give you an example of what we're doing as well, which I'm hoping is going to be able to help our members. We mentioned mental health already, so we haven't previously had a mental health policy, and we are writing a mental health policy that we want to have in place for the association, for our volunteers, for our staff team. But when we've done that, what we want to do is put that on the website and make it available in a format so that anyone else out there can just basically take our mental health policy and put their name on the top. Not selling it, not trying to make money, but just giving it away. Yeah. Because we've got to produce this stuff anyway, and we want to produce this stuff. So there's a lot of businesses out there, whether they're established businesses or new businesses, who may well want a mental health policy, just to pick one at random, but who either don't have the know-how or the resources or the time to do it. So let's start producing the stuff that we need anyway and making it available online so that everybody can access it, and then there's no excuse for them not to have one.
Awesome. Right, we're going to questions from the floor. So before every episode, follow us on Instagram at ALLTHINGSARB. We say, what would you like us to ask the next guest? And we've got 10, 15 questions. Some of them kind of cross over. So questions are, what is the most common reason businesses do not get approved?
So businesses who've gone for accreditation, who don't... Oh, well, I mean, I don't know what the most common reason is, but essentially it will be either because your health and safety practices don't meet the requirements or because your tree work doesn't meet the requirements. We try not just to sort of say, no, you failed. We try and say, well, these are the areas on which you need to work. Like I said, this is about raising standards. And in some ways, that's it's quite a good thing in a way. If a business says we want to go for Arbor-approved contractor and this is what we do, and then it's reviewed and looked at, and we say, well, actually, these bits here you need to tweak. Yeah. And then they tweak those bits, they lift up that bit they need, and they become Arbor-approved. In some ways, that's kind of the point. Yeah. That's the point of the scheme. That is a company that has raised its standards to meet the bar that we need to become approved. So I think that the reason for not getting on there is simply because they haven't met the required standards somewhere, but we want to work with them to get them over that line.
Have you ever had to remove anyone from the scheme?
We have had to remove people from the scheme, yes.
Yeah. Simple as that. That's fine.
Well, I mean, I don't mind expanding. I won't give individual cases, but what I would say, if the scheme is going to be taken seriously and if we're going to have integrity in the scheme, then we need to make sure that we keep people following the standards they need to follow. Otherwise, the whole thing becomes pointless. Otherwise, people don't have confidence in the scheme. Otherwise, people just say, well, what's the point? So we have the scheme handbook, which kind of contains the rules. We've got a complaints procedure, which is very robust, and we are committed to making sure that if people breach the rules or if people breach the code of conduct and ethics, that they will be investigated, and if they don't meet the standards, then they will be removed from the scheme.
Yeah, because that's strange enough. That was going to be my next question. Well, this one of our followers' next question. Can people report bad work done by an AA member, and will you investigate?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've got a complaints procedure. It's on the website. It applies to all of our members. It applies to our approved contractors. It applies to our registered consultants. Essentially, the main remit of our complaints procedure is our code of conduct and ethics. So if people breach that code of conduct and ethics, or if people think they've breached the code, then they can submit a complaint through the complaints procedure. But also, if they're seeing wrongdoing more generally, then yes, they can make a complaint. Obviously, I would say sometimes the stuff we get told about is kind of health and safety stuff.
Yeah.
If you've got an urgent health and safety thing, health and safety executive would be good to speak to, the police in some cases.
Yeah.
But we take every complaint we receive extremely seriously.
Why do you only vet one team in larger companies, leaving room for poor work?
I think there is a case to say that we should maybe look at more than one team. A lot of it is to do with resources as well.
Yep.
It can, if you've got a large company, you're doing a 2-3 day audit. There's a lot of stuff to look at. We're getting assessors to go and look at everything. There's only so much they can go and check. They can't go and check absolutely every individual. But I think we're not just assessing the contractor based on the tree work we see on the day. Obviously, we are looking at the tree work on the day, and that is part of the assessment. But what we're looking is to see that they are demonstrating the qualities and the values and the standards that their paperwork shows, that their site visit and that their depot visit has shown. So, you hear a lot about, but they might just get ringers in or whatever and in for the day climbing and they'll sort of trick you. Well, that is possible.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you that that's never going to happen because it's quite difficult to police that. But our assessors hopefully won't just be taken in by that one day, because they're also looking at all the paperwork. They're looking at all the, that detail that happens either in the desktop audit or the stuff they look at when they go into the depot. And our assessors aren't stupid. They're experienced and they're knowledgeable, and they can kind of link up what they're seeing there with what they're seeing down here. And those two things should be tallying up. Yeah.
Everyone tries to pull the wool over everyone's eyes at least once. Do you get work from being ARB approved?
Does who? Do contractors get work?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
It's difficult to quantify. I think it's difficult. You'd almost need a contractor who's had a certain amount of work over a period of time and then become approved, and has then either got more or less or the same, and you need to kind of replicate that. So it's quite difficult. My suggestion would be yes. I think you would get more work from being approved, if only because, as I've said, there are tree officers all over the country, and there are people all over the country who direct people to the approved contractor directory. Yeah. So I can only imagine that does generate work, yes, but how much it generates, I don't know. And it's really important, again, it shouldn't just be about the work. It would be really disappointing if you had an approved contractor who said, well, we were approved because we wanted to get all these jobs, and we got those jobs, so now we don't need to be approved, so we're just going to drop off. Because whilst getting the jobs is certainly part of it, it's also about those standards. It's about testing yourself, it's about checking yourself, it's about a badge of honour, and we hope that people continue regardless of that.
How many people leave the scheme each year?
How many people leave each year? Again, I could find details for you and would happily share all the statistics with you. The main reason that people leave the scheme, in my experience, from what I understand, is essentially because they've retired or they've sold their business. We don't have that many people leaving the scheme because they go, I don't like the scheme anymore. But there will be some. I guess it's a lot of effort to get on the scheme. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of time. It's a big commitment. And if you're doing that year on year on year, then to drop off that, it would probably be quite a big thing, But we will do some people from that.
Is there a typical cost or an estimated cost what it would be for a business to go down the process?
Well, it varies hugely based on the size of the company. So that the rates are mainly based on whether you're a sort of small, medium or large company. And it also, like I say, it isn't just about what you're paying on the day to be looked at. Most businesses are going to have to invest in getting to the standard they need to get to as well. So it's going to vary massively depending on the company itself and the size. But there's price lists and everything available on the website if you want the detail of that.
Awesome. Has the AA written to the UK government with regards to red diesel?
Yes.
Now, I know we spoke on that earlier, so the answer to that one's just yes.
Yeah. So and there is a meeting. We wrote to HMRC, we've written to DEFRA, we've written to Secretary of State for Environment. We've spoken to our local MP, and we've now got a meeting that I think is at the end of April is the plan with the Treasury to discuss the concerns.
What are your thoughts on theft within the industry, and is the AA doing anything about it?
I mean, we are getting reports from time to time about theft, about people having their kit and their vehicles nicked. It's really bad when that happens. I mean, it's just absolutely terrible. In terms of are the AA doing enough about it, there's maybe a limit to what we can do. We would recommend that people obviously have all their stuff insured. We recommend all the obvious stuff that people know about, locking them all up safely, about getting them marked up, as best you can. I'm not entirely sure what we could do about it. If anyone out there is thinking, why don't you do this and that would help, then again, john@trees.org.uk, let me know and we can look into it, because it's we obviously don't want that happening. Theft is bad. Yeah. That is you can take that statement from the Arboricultural Association. We don't like theft.
I mean, the last question, I've not got it written down, but I've just remembered it. I can't remember who asked me to ask it to you, but I really like the idea. Say I'm a freelance climber, so I work between different companies, and I want to get approved status. Do I have to be a contractor, or is there like an individual level status that I could take around with me as such?
Well, as you know, there's no sort of individual level approved contractor scheme. No. There has been talk of it in the past. I think there is value in the idea of having individuals accredited instead of having companies accredited. I think it will get around a lot of the stuff you've talked about with why do you only look at one team and all that kind of thing, because you could see the problem, I guess, is and probably the reason it doesn't exist is the scale of the challenge to actually set that up. You and I could sit down today and work out exactly how that scheme should look, and then we could get it over to the marketing team and start promoting it early next week. How long would it be until we got to the point where that was commonly bought into? The AC scheme has been going 25 years or so. We're not there on the scheme yet, and it's easier to do it with companies than it is to do it with individuals. But I think there is space for that, and it's something we definitely consider getting involved in. But I think it's probably more complicated than people think it is, because until you get to that tipping point where there's enough people out there with that accreditation so that employers can start demanding that accreditation, until you get to that massive numbers, can take a long time to get there before it all sort of starts building itself.
Definitely. Right, so I've remembered it this time. So this is the little brown book. So the idea with the little brown book is the guest on the previous podcast gets to ask the next guest on the podcast a question, but the previous guest doesn't know who the next guest is.
Yep.
And I haven't even looked at what the question is. I've had it for about 2 weeks. I don't even know which one it is. So I'm going to have to quickly find it. It's an easy one, this is. So this one's from Adam Hope, which is the last podcast, strangely enough. Where do you see the industry in 10 years' time?
I hope that in 10 years' time we have got an industry that is far better understood and respected. And I hope in 10 years' time we've got more people coming into the industry. I hope that those more people are more representative of the communities they serve. I hope that we're respected by the public, by the politicians, by other industries and other professions, and that people know what arboriculture is. Yeah. They don't just write us off as, you do trees.
The tree guys have turned up again.
The tree guys have turned up, yeah. I hope that we are moving to a point when actually we are given the respect and acknowledgement that our profession demands, because we do an incredibly important and complex job, no matter what part of arboriculture you work in. And I hope that in 10 years' time we're starting to make some headway into getting that recognised.
So, last one from at the Brown Book, from Ben Brooker from Subtrack. If you could change one key decision you have made in the last 12 months for your business, what would you change and why?
I might need more than 2 minutes on that one. I gotta try and think.
It is one of those questions, isn't it, that gets you?
Yeah, it is a difficult one, and I'm honestly really struggling. And that's not because I don't think there's any decisions I could have made differently. I'm just trying to pick one out. I don't know, maybe we could have done more to have asked our members and asked the profession with things like the coronavirus restrictions and all that sort of stuff. We could maybe have done more to check with them that the advice we were giving them was right, that it was workable. We put a lot of stuff together in a relatively short space of time, and we did consult as widely as we could. But maybe we should, we could always do more collaboration and asking questions, and maybe we should have asked more about what do you need to deliver better for them.
Brilliant, John. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for having us to come down.
Thank you. Great pleasure. Thank you very much.